Hey, what's up? About 2.5 years ago, I did a recipe for deep dish pizza on this channel that I thought was really good until last weekend when I made it for myself recreationally and found out that flavor-wise, it is nearly perfect, but texturally, it misses out on some of the details that I think are very important as a former Chicago liver. So I went back to the drawing board to retool this recipe, especially the dough, and now I've got something that I am very excited to share and something that I think mimics exactly what you get in a true deep dish pizzeria.
That crust is crispy.
To get started, we'll need to make some deep dish dough. So I'll grab my food processor and into the jar of that combine 375 grams of all-purpose flour, 10 grams of salt, and then 40 grams of cubed cold butter. This is half the amount of butter that I used in the 1.0 version of this recipe because too much fat softens the crust, and I want my crust to be as distinctively crunchy as humanly possible. For now, I'll just spin everything together for about 15 seconds or until the butter has been cut into the flour. Next, I'll grab 220 grams of 90F water and into it add 6 grams of instant yeast. A quick stir to dissolve it. Then with the chopper running, I'll stream this into the butter flour. Using a food processor over a stand mixer here allows us to combine the ingredients without developing too much gluten. A stronger gluten network makes for a chewier pizza dough, and for actual pizzas, you know, bread with stuff on top, that chewiness is welcome. But deep dish pizza is basically pie. It's baked in a dish with several pounds of wet stuff sitting in the middle. Just like for pie, having a weaker, more brittle crust, especially around the outside, is how we maintain texture in such a weird, wet environment. And after about 1 minute of spinning, things should be well combined and somewhere in between a dough and a pie crust. From here, I'll move it over to a bowl and then round it into a ball shape with a little bit of tension. This is really going to be the only strength building that I do to this dough. I do need some gluten to hold things together because without it, the dough would be too sticky to roll out. From here, I'll pop a lid on this and ferment it at room temperature for 30 minutes. 30 minutes later, this dough is a little bit gassier, but mostly this 30 minutes was about letting the fermentation get started before I throw it in the fridge. So I'll pop on a lid and then slow ferment this in the fridge for as little as 12 hours, but preferably 24. The longer you ferment it, the crispier your crust will be. 24 hours later, when I pull out this dough, you can see that it's grown a bit, but not a ton. For now, I'm gonna let this warm up for 45 minutes so that the butter inside is malleable and that I can actually roll it out. And in the meantime, I'll preheat my oven to 425F and then grab a medium saucepan and drop it on the stove over medium-high heat. Once that's hot, in goes 50 grams of butter. I'll let that melt, and then I'll add in 100 grams of grated white onion and 15 to 20 grams of minced garlic. For the onion, I just hit it on the largest hold sides of my box grater. The pulpiness created by the box here makes for an onion that easily melts into the sauce. Diced onions can work, but they make things kind of marinara-y and rustic in a way that I don't like. Next, I'll just jump in and stir all this to combine and fry it for about 4 to 5 minutes while I get the tomato part sorted out. For that, I'll combine one 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes, one 28-ounce can of whole peeled tomatoes, then 75 grams of tomato paste, and then I'll jump in and use my bare hands to squish those whole peeled tomatoes. One of the things that I missed in the 1.0 version was having some sort of tomato texture in the sauce. The best deep dish places in Chicago have meaty chunks of fleshy tomato suspended in a smooth, thick puree. And once I've got these squeezed into half-inch sized chunks like this, I'll add in 10 grams of salt, 20 grams of sugar, 2 grams of dried oregano, 2 grams of dried basil, and 2 grams of dried chili flakes. Now a quick stir to get everything combined, and then I'll check back at the stove. As you can see, things have softened and are starting to take on some light golden brown color. So I'll add in my tomato mixture. I'll turn the heat down from medium-high to medium so that things don't get too ploppy, and then I'll reduce this sauce by 40 to 50%. That'll take about 15 to 20 minutes. So in the meantime, I'll make some quick, fresh, hot Italian sausage, the essential deep dish topping. To make it, into a bowl goes 1 pound of fatty ground pork, preferably at least 80-20, then 7 grams of salt, 10 grams of sugar, 5 grams of paprika, 3 grams of dried sage, 2 grams of black pepper, 2 grams of chili flake, 2 to 3 cloves of garlic that I've grated on my microplane or pressed with my garlic press, 2 to 3 grams of crushed toasted fennel seed, and then lastly in goes 10 grams of red wine vinegar. From there, I'll just jump in and mix this until it's a little bit tacky and everything is combined. You guys, DIY Italian sausage for pizza is too easy and too good to skip. It's fresh, garlicky, and way more flavorful than about 90% of the bulk stuff that I can find at a grocery store. Next, I'll check back on my sauce, but first I'm gonna show you how to make a smoky version of my current favorite warm weather drink, the Paloma. To make it, I'll be using barware and glassware from Whiskey, the sponsor of this video. On to the cocktail. It's the middle of the day for me, so I'm going to use NA tequila, which is surprisingly very good. Then I'll be mixing that with equal parts lime and grapefruit juice, then 2 tablespoons of light agave syrup. And to give it some smoky complexity, I'll finish it with a smoke rinse using the Whiskey smoked cocktail kit. The entire kit is just these 3 pieces plus the smoke pellet, so it's really easy to use and efficient. I'll serve this in my Highland double old-fashioned glasses, also from Whiskey, and top it with a splash of grapefruit soda water. What I like about Whiskey is that their barware is both beautiful and well designed. They consult with professional bartenders to make sure things are well thought out and functional. Plus, they're lead free, because, you know, lead is bad, and you can just throw them right in the dishwasher, so it's super convenient. So if you want to drink fancy cocktails out of beautiful civilized glassware like me, head to Whiskey.com and use code Brian15 for 15% off site-wide. Thank you, Whiskey. After about 20 minutes of reducing, this pizza sauce should be quite thick. Since it goes on top of the cheese, we need something that is going to be bordering on pasty. My test to see if it's done is if it holds a trail when I pass my spatula through it. If yours is looser than this, I would say keep on cooking. Now, it's time to build this pizza. I'll set aside my sauce, then grab my tempered pizza dough. At this point, the butter inside has softened enough for me to roll it out, and the dough itself has gassed up by about 30%. At this point, we need to prepare the deep dish to put this dough in. For that, I've got 2 options. One is this 12-inch Lloyd brand deep dish pan. This is my preferred vessel because it's as close as you can get at home to what the pizzerias in Chicago use. It conducts heat into the crust beautifully, and it's very heavy duty. I'll throw a link below to this one specifically in the description if you want to get one for yourself. Option 2 would be a 12-inch seasoned cast iron pan. This can work, but I prefer the crust shape and aesthetic that I get from the Lloyd pan, so that's what I'm using. To prepare it for the crust, I'll give it a good, long, generous squeezer of olive oil. Then I'll use a paper towel to spread that out over every surface and up the sides. Once my pan is greased up, I'll set it aside, flour my board, my dough. I'll flip the dough onto that surface, then I'll flour the backside, give it a pat to degas it, flip it over, then I'll grab my rolling pin and start to roll it out. Right away, you can feel how little strength this dough actually has. The rolling pin has no problem rolling this out, and there is virtually no snapback. Oh, and since there's flecks of butter in the dough and we didn't mix it that hard, you might find a little sticky butter spot. No problem, just dust that with flour and keep on rolling. I'll mention that a lot of the deep dish places that I've seen push their dough into the pan by hand, almost like a focaccia, and when I tried that, the dough got pretty chewy. I think that's from excessive working, and there's something different between their process and mine, and I think at least for this recipe, rolling it out is the best option for the home cook. And once this is 14 inches across like this, I'll grab my pan and then carefully lay out my rolled dough. Now, theoretically, since this dough is roughly the width of this pan plus the height, all I need to do is come back and pinch the dough up the sides like this. I'll just make sure to push the dough into the lower corner as I go here so that there isn't any space between the crust and the pan. That will lead to a steam bubble when I bake this that will soften the crust and probably deform the pizza. And once I've got my pizza dough pressed perfectly into this 12-inch pan, it's time to fill it. First, I'll lay down 2 layers of thick sliced full-fat mozzarella cheese. In version 1.0, I used shredded mozzarella. That also will work if that's what you've got, but slices are easier and save me on a little bit of prep time. Next, I'll add on 5 to 6 very thin slices of provolone cheese. This is not traditional, but it does bring a piquant sharpness to this pizza that helps cut through some of the fatty mozzarella. Next, I'll drop down a lot of Italian sausage. I'm doing that in little quarter-sized pieces that are about 1 inch apart. The batch of sausage that we made earlier is actually enough to cover 2 whole pizzas, so I'll add on about 8 ounces worth of this sausage, then I'll freeze the other half for the next time I want to around with deep dish. Next, I'll add on half of the pizza sauce. Again, I like to batch this and freeze half for next time, so there's basically no prep other than making pizza dough. I'll spread that out into an even layer that's about a 1/2 inch. Don't be shy on the sauce here. And then I'll make this a meat lover's deep dish by laying on some thin sliced pepperonis. Maybe 25 of those in total. And then finally, I'll hit this whole thing with a generous dusting of grated Parmesan cheese, at least 2 handfuls. This is gonna merge with that pep fat, making a kind of spicy cheese oil that lubes up the whole thing. And there we go, 6.5 pounds of food stuffed into a 12-inch pan. Let's see what happens when we bake it. To do that, I'll load it into my preheated 425F oven and bake it for 35 to 40 minutes. Cut to the time lapse. Look at that. Oh, and after 3/4 of an hour, this pizza is baked. So I'll pull it out so we can take a closer look. As you can see, the crust is lightly golden brown, the peps are cupped and a little crisp around the edges, and the cheese and roni have unified into one melty thing. Now, crucially, to prevent the crust from steaming itself soft in the pan, I'm gonna very carefully slide this pizza onto a wire rack to cool it for at least 10 minutes. After 15 minutes of rest time, I'll slide this back into the pan and give my pizza a slice. Of course, you could cut this on a cutting board and you would probably get cleaner slices, but the pizza cools off really fast that way and you lose that hot and melty quality way too soon. Speaking of melty, look at this thing. It's basically equal parts sausage, cheese, and sauce, and as you can see, the outside crust is well set. To enjoy it, I'll drop it on a plate, top it with even more Parmesan, and then to eat it like a civilized son of Chicago should, I'll grab a knife and a fork. Deep dish version 2 is much closer to my ideal. It's less sloppy, it's more crunchy, and has more flavor from that overnight fermentation. I really hope you guys try this new and improved version soon, and please let me know in the comments how you think it stacks up against version 1. Let's eat this thing!